That's right, everybody. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. I hope you like our little new intro we've been working on. We're going to have a video package accompanying that soon, but hope everybody enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us here today. This is the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, joined by my co-host, the great Daniel Bobo Curlin. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fine. And bro, you know who else thought that intro hit hard? My mom.
Whoa! Yeah, man. Good. I'm glad you liked it. It's something I've been screwing around with for a little while, and I'm glad it sounds pretty good. You know, me and you were discussing right before we came on the air that it's got that like old school WFAN feel to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or or as I call golden era of WFAN.
Golden era. I like it. That's true, my friend. So definitely hope everybody enjoyed that. We'll have a little bit more to that next week. Hopefully we'll have everything settled by then. But if not, we'll hear the song again, and hope everybody enjoyed it. We'll post it online too, so people can check it out and hear it in full. But yeah, everybody. So thanks once again for tuning in here for the Best Seat in the House podcast. We got a lot to get to today, Dan. There is a lot going on in the sports world right now. Obviously, today is July 31st, which normally would be the trade deadline. But oddly, the trade deadline was yesterday on July 30th. You know, before we get into all the nonsense that's happened over the last couple of days, all the transactions that we have to get into, the Mets and the Yankees have both made. You know, Dan, what do you think about this? Once again, it's something that Rob Manfred does. It just bothers me. You know, you used to be able to set your watch to the fact that Major League Baseball, you know, obviously back in the day with the Tom Seaver trade and the Keith Hernandez trade and everything, though the trade deadline back in those days was June 15th. But ever since me and you have, been around really for the most part and been baseball fans paying attention to the trade deadline, it's been July 31st. And it used to be when we were kids, it used to be at midnight. So, man, I used to love staying up late on trade deadline day till, I was a little kid watching Baseball Tonight, because that was pretty much the only, source of info we had back then. Watching that on ESPN until midnight when the trade deadline was over, and then 12:01, everything was done. Then a couple of years after that, they changed it to 4 p.m., which, okay, made sense, whatever. By the end of business on July 31st, they wanted it done. But over the last couple of years, and I'm sure COVID had something to do with it, they've kind of changed the deadline around a little bit. It was August 2nd one year. It was August 1st one year. Now it's July 30th. What do you think about them changing the trade deadline day all the time now?
I'm not a fan of it. I just like it that it would go up to midnight and stuff. You'd be able to watch all this coverage and stuff. I kind of miss that.
Yeah, and even it's not just me and you that were kind of caught off guard by the early trade deadline this year. I saw that Mike Puma from the New York Post was actually talking to a player off the record. He never actually named which player it was, but he said that the player he was speaking to was incredulous over the fact that the trade deadline was not on July 30th. He said it was on July 31st until he was finally showed. I guess he pulled it up on Google or whatever and showed him, no, the trade deadline is actually on the 30th this year. So even the players can't believe it. So it's not just guys like me and you that we're looking around on the 30th and saying, geez, today's trade deadline day. So it's another thing. Hopefully they can fix that and at least just make it a hard day eventually. But yeah, it's another weird thing we got to get used to in the Rob Manfred era of baseball.
Yeah, Rob Manfred freaking screwing everything up he touches.
Yeah, it's kind of like the opposite of a Midas touch, Like everything he touches turns to shit.
Yep. Everything he touches turns to shit in my clutch. Too much. Never mind it. I'm just parroting an old song from an old Christmas special back in the day that I remember we used to see on TV back in the day.
Yes, exactly. The snow miser, my friend.
Oh, oh, yep. Glad to see you know the song also.
There we go. There we go. Hey, you can't beat a little Christmas in July feel to us right now. Yeah, Dan. So all this talk about the trade deadline. Let's get into what actually happened on the trade deadline. What our teams did. We'll start with the Mets, as the Mets had a pretty big day, and Dan, it or a couple of days, because this didn't all happen on one day, but it was over the course of a few days, and you know, Dan, this to me kind of had a New York Rangers 2022 trade deadline feel to it for me. If you remember, the Rangers went out and acquired guys like Andrew Kopp and just guys that were not necessarily the top of the list of guys that you'd want. It wasn't the big flashy names, but those were guys that they put in on their lineup, and they went on a run in the playoffs and almost took down the defending Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning at that point. But the Mets did something similar. They went out and they didn't really give up a lot. They didn't give up any high level prospects or anything like that. And look at this haul. This is a pretty damn good haul. As much as me and you have been critical of David Stearns during his tenure so far with the Mets, I have to give him credit. And look, we could end up looking back on this in a few months and saying, boy, did all these guys bomb out. But you got to give him credit for, this wasn't Billy Epler going out there and only giving us Daniel Vogelback and Darren Ruff. These are guys that are proven major leaguers that are coming in here for the most part and are going to contribute to the Mets in the second half of this season. So Ryan Stanek is the relief pitcher they got from the Seattle Mariners. They picked up Jesse Winker. If you remember, he's a left-handed hitter that could play the outfield. He's kind of versatile too. He could steal some bases as well. So a nice thing with Jesse Winker, who could be a good piece of left-handed protection in that lineup. Then they went out and picked up a pretty good piece. I don't think people realize how good Paul Blackburn is. This is a guy that, as a guy that plays a lot of fantasy baseball, this is a guy that I've known for a couple of years. I like Paul Blackburn. He's got good stuff. This is a guy that is a former All-Star, and the Mets getting him at a very reasonable value. They didn't give up even a top 20 prospect for him. So I think Paul Blackburn is really going to be an under-the-radar pickup for the Mets. And then they got two other guys. Now, Tyler Zuber, I don't really know much about. He's a guy that's kind of bounced back and forth between the minors and the majors. He's been with Tampa Bay this year, which is a good sign. Usually any relief pitcher from Tampa Bay is going to be pretty damn good. But Tyler Zuber, pretty decent numbers between the minors and majors this year. And then Huascar Brazoban, who the Mets got from the Miami Marlins, who is really, really good. This guy has one of the lowest hard hit percentages in baseball for all pitchers. So this guy really does not allow solid contact. And, when you're pitching in big spots, that's really what you want. You don't want any of these screaming line drives that can find a hole or get down the line or something like that. And right now, Brazoban is one of the better guys at preventing that kind of stuff. So, Dan, with all that coming out at you right now, what is your initial reaction to our first trade deadline under David Stearns?
I'm under the impression David Stearns is trying to pull something what Atlanta did in 2021. I feel like it's more on the lines of that.
Yeah, which is like I said about the Rangers in 2022. It's very, very similar to those two teams. I totally agree with you. Now, Dan, if you were going to give it a grade, like a letter grade for, I'll let you go first. What would you give the grade for David Stearns on this first trade deadline?
I feel maybe a B minus.
B minus, okay. Okay, I get that. For me, actually, and I know, look, Met fans are gonna, or if you've been watching this show for a little while, you might be surprised at my optimism. But I'm gonna actually give it a B plus. I'm gonna go up a little bit. I'm gonna say me and you are pretty much on par with that. I'm just gonna give it a little bit more because, to be honest, um I didn't expect this. And the only thing that I could really say that he didn't do that I wanted them to do, even though you would also have liked a bigger bat or an additional bat along with Jesse Winker. But look, the price for these guys were outrageous this year. It was a seller's market, as they say. But the one thing I will say is that I feel like um, you know they did the best possible job uh, that he could in this situation, and I feel like I didn't even expect him to add, especially after Kodai Senga got hurt. I thought the Mets were screwed. I thought we'd be seeing Tyler McGill in the rotation for the rest of the year, which even if you saw him today in the afternoon game the Mets played, um, pitching in relief. I hope this is. I really hope we're nearing the end of the Tyler McGill era because he's just not good. He's a AAA pitcher. Me and you were talking about this on our Patreon show over the weekend. If you want to get in on that, we do a show for our Patreon members every Sunday, $5 a month. We'd appreciate any of the support we get. So thank you so much. If you're already on, if you want to get on board, come on. It's only $5. We appreciate it. And Dan, yeah, what were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's only that it's about the cost of a Metro card.
Exactly. Cost of a Metro card, so or a cup of coffee, whatever you want to do. And if you're going to Starbucks, it's probably cheaper than a cup of coffee. So we, so we appreciate all the help that we get from all the people that support us, and even the ones obviously, especially the people as well that aren't subscribed that just contribute on our YouTube as well. Thank you so much to everybody for taking the time out of your day and spending it with us for a little while. But yeah, Dan, I mean, just to get back on point here now, with all these additions, me and you have, or actually, to be fair, you predicted that the Mets were going to make the playoffs. You said it was going to be as a wild card, so you are already on track of saying that the Mets are going to be a playoff team. Me, I was very, very vocal about how I did not think this was a playoff team. And especially with the way everything was handled leading up to it, going into the regular season, that is. But I'll tell you this, Dan, I do think that the Mets are going to make the playoffs now. And with a big reason being this trade deadline. I feel like if they did not add a starting pitcher, if they did not add a bunch of these guys that we see out here, especially the bullpen too, because me and you have talked at length about the struggles the bullpen has had this year, and adding these couple of guys is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope they pull it off, and it's gonna be a very nerve-wracking next two months. I can tell you that.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and that's a good thing though too. You'd rather be sweating a little bit going down the stretch with these Mets games than not caring, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was retraining. I'm hoping to see City Field that pack down that stretch run. Also, it's gonna be pretty exciting. I just bought a little Mets. I bought a Grimace shirt, so I'll probably be wearing that on Sunday.
There you go. Okay, very cool. So, Dan's got his Grimace shirt coming, and as we all know, all this this turnaround really can be traced back to the day the Grimace threw out the first pitch at Citi Field. Believe it or not, yes, I actually just said that. That's when everything really started to turn around. So really got to love that. And, when you look at what we've been going at, Dan, too, I mean, the last couple of days have been really great. They hammered the Twins on Monday night, 15-2. They went out and won a really tight game with probably the best game we've seen from Sean Manaea yesterday, when he threw 7 shutout innings and a 2-0 win, struck out 11 batters over that time. And then Stanek came in and stumbled a little bit in the eighth, but he got 2 big outs. And then, looking like it was 2022 all over again, Edwin Diaz comes out and fires a 4-out save for the Mets to get the series victory at least. So they ended up losing today. But what did you think about those first 2 big games, which were big rebound games too, because losing those last 2 games against the Braves, even though it wasn't that bad because it was still a series sweep, if they let that linger into this Twin series and lost 2 out of 3, or God forbid get swept, that could have been the end of the year right here.
Yeah, thank God they managed to pull it off. I have to say, going into the game, I decided I may have been weird things similar to something like Jabu from Major League. I may have offered the Grimace Plush milkshake. Offer you a milkshake. I actually drank the milkshake beforehand, but hypothetically, I offered the Grimace a milkshake. And
was it a McDonald's milkshake?
Yeah, exactly. Somehow,
okay,
by
there we
luck,
go.
the milkshake machine was working.
Thank God. That must have been a miracle in itself.
Yeah, that must have been why the Mets won that game with the blowout. That, and I figured wearing a Mike Piazza jersey would wake up the bats that game. When I went to the game, I was wearing the old school black Mike Piazza jersey, and it woke up the bats.
Very nice, man. Very nice. Hey, well, you should break out that black Piazza jersey more often then, as the Mets went on a tear the other night. No doubt about it. Now, today, unfortunately, was not the same. The offense kind of stagnated today, and the pitching just wasn't there. Luis Severino has been so good for the Mets this year, but his ERA jumped about a half run today, as he lost his 4th game of the year, drops to 7-4, the 3.93 ERA. He got beat up in the 3rd inning. That's where he ran into trouble. He had a really easy 1st inning, got out of a jam in the 2nd, and then in the 3rd just completely fell apart. He didn't have, one thing that's really key to Severino is having that pinpoint control, and he just didn't really have it today, especially in the 3rd. Gave up 5 runs, 6 altogether, and the Mets just couldn't rally. And that was pretty much the end of that. So the thing that you have to keep in mind is that at least Severino is given the Mets. This has been an aberration to how good he's been this year for the Mets. You know what I'm saying? Where if the guy has a bad outing like this every once in a while, you can't really kill him that much, because he's been, for the most part, very good for the Mets this year, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's been very good. He exceeded expectations. During the off season, I was saying, "What the fuck is David Stern thinking?" At first, I was like, thinking Severino. This guy, all I hear is every Yankee fan I know complain about this guy. And you sign this guy? Oh, I guess we got. I was thinking, oh my God, we're gonna have to deal with this headache that I've heard Yankee fans complain about, and he's doing it with us. Only he's gonna do it with us. Then all of a sudden, season starts. He surpassed every expectation we had over him.
Yes, Severino was arguably the worst pitcher in baseball last year. Like, you actually could have made that argument and not sounded crazy. The guy for most of the year had an ERA over 7, and then it came down. He had a good start or two at the end of the year. It took it down just a little bit under 7, but I mean, that's how bad it was. And if you're not really a big baseball fan, really anything over 5 is awful. Even anything over 4.5 is kind of like, So if you're getting in the range of 7, you've had an all-time bad year. And that's pretty much what it was last year for Severino. So everybody, including the two of us, pretty much laughed and mocked David Stearns when he signed Severino. And hey, it's been a very, very good signing. I will sit here and give my mea culpa for that, no doubt about it. Um, and yeah, one other thing too, I wanted to touch on the Mets before we get to them heading out west after today, Dan, is there's another guy that really needs a big pat on the back for how he's done for the Mets since he's come back up onto this major league team. Let's not forget Mark Vientos did not make the team out of training camp, which we all thought he should have, and it was kind of ridiculous the Mets didn't. But Vientos didn't make the team out of training camp, would shortly after that join the team, and Vientos has just been he's really been so good for this team since he's come back, Dan. He hit his 16th home run of the year today, which put the Mets up 2-1. And when he hit that, I thought the Mets were for sure going to sweep them today. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. But he becomes the third Mets third baseman all time to hit that many home runs in his first 220 at-bats of the season. So I kind of went specific with 220, but it really is just around 200. And to think that only Robin Ventura and Howard Johnson have had better power numbers through that same amount of at-bats, that's pretty impressive when you look at the list. I mean, that shows even David Wright never had a season like that, to start a year like that,
Yeah, that is impressive to be able to for Vientos to do that, and I have to say kudos to management and of course Carlos Mendoza for actually giving Vientos a chance this time. I felt like it was like showing off like late in the season when I don't know, it was his GM or some shit that was doing the writing the lineup cards, but they're finally giving Vientos a chance that he was showing, and it's finally showing off. They've given this guy a chance, and he's running with it.
It's true. It's true. He looks like right now, he looks like the player that we saw in AAA. Like right now, down in AAA, Brett Beatty looks like a pretty damn good player. But look, we've seen that quite a few times. And when it comes to the major leagues, it's a different story. We saw that last year with Vientos, where he didn't resemble the player with that power that we saw in the minor leagues. Well, he's brought that to the table this year and then some. So, this is a guy that's on pace for well over 20 home runs this year. And probably if he got a full year and a full 500-600 at bats, he'd probably hit 30 plus. So really, really great job out of the Mets and Vientos there. So love seeing that. And now, as we said, obviously they ended up dropping the homestand finale today as the Mets took a winning homestand, 4-3. So, you can't cry over spilt milk. They didn't get the sweep, but they still had a positive homestand. And now they hit the road, which, by the way, too, if you look at the month of August and the crazy road trips the Mets are going to be on, they're going to have two extended West Coast road trips with a very short homestand sandwiched in between. And this is all because, once again, Rob Manfred doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and he's pretending that baseball is the same thing as hockey and basketball, where you have to play every team every year. Now, that's what happened with these crazy road trips. The Mets are going to, LA, quote unquote, to play the Anaheim Angels. The Mets are going to St. Louis. The Mets are going to Colorado and Seattle. Like, you never would have to go to the West Coast 2 or 3 times a year before they started doing these ridiculous, where you play the every team every year. What do you think about this, Dan? Because I didn't like it, and then when I see stuff like this, I dislike it even more.
Yeah, exactly. I just dislike it even more. Plus, that it's not easy on us East Coasters to watch.
Yeah, no doubt about that. That is true too. And hey, if you're not catering to the fans, who are you catering to?
Yeah, exactly. And The heck, I mean, I have to admit, if it's down the stretch run, I'm probably staying up to watch. I mean, right now this part in August. I'm probably going to end up having to utilize my DVR a bit for some of these games.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that, Dan. I mean,
And I'm
especially when you have
specifically
to wake up early and everything.
talking about the night games on this road trip. I mean,
Yeah,
the day games, I'll be up and watching.
yeah,
But
the day games are no problem, but when the games start, like the game, that's the thing that pisses me off. The Mets are going to be in um, Anaheim on Friday. Technically, whatever they want to call it, LA, but it's in Anaheim on Friday, right? So the game starts at 9:38. 9:38. Now it does help that it's not a weekday, so it actually is a weekend, so you can stay up a little bit later if you want. But what about these little kids? You have there's a lot of little kid baseball fans that you want to help grow the next generation of baseball fans. And when you're starting a game at 9:38 on the East Coast, how are any of these kids going to stay up? Some of these kids are going to sleep before first pitch.
yeah, exactly. Like, how the heck do they expect them to pull this off? I don't know. It's not. It's an alien. It's almost worse. This is almost worse than that whole Apple TV deal, which I don't like for
Oh,
some
yeah,
games.
that's true. And me and you could go off on that for a long time if we
Yeah,
really wanted to. But
yeah, yeah,
the
and I've said it before. If there's any games happening in September, because I don't want to miss a single game in that stretch run, I'm gonna just use the free trial the promo.
or you know what? Because I'm not even going to do that, to be honest. You know what I'll be doing at that point? I'll be listening to Howie. That's what I'm going to be doing because I can't take. I hate and the broadcasts all suck too. Whenever they put it on Apple TV, whenever they put it on any of these other services, even the Yankees, it's the same thing basically as what's it called? As Yes Network, but when they have it on I forget what streaming service they have it on. What is it on?
Amazon. They put some games on Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, even then, it's still choppy and crappy, and nobody likes it. It's just a joke how they do this to fans. Once again, just choosing the dollar over the fan every time. And guess what? If you do that enough times, you're gonna end up losing that fan, and a lot of those dollars that fan would have paid. So, baseball's gonna have to wake up. This guy Manfred doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and I know he doesn't have much to do with the Yankees' side deal with Amazon, but still it's it's a symptom of what's wrong with the game right now. But let's keep it moving along here. Dan will move on from the Mets. We'll take a look at the crosstown Bronx Bombers. Take a look at what they did at the trade deadline. Now they didn't have as big a deadline as the Mets did, acquiring 6 big pieces, or at least 6 roster worthy pieces for the Mets. The Yankees went out there and had a little bit more reserved deadline than we're even used to for the Yankees. And to be honest, I understand why there's a lot of frustration with the Yankee fan right now. I saw Eastside Dave, our friend Eastside Dave, was not very happy with his GM, as he calls him, the Ferret. Not very happy with him. As look, the Yankees had a decent trade deadline. You have Jazz Chisholm from the Miami Marlins, who the Yankees got, and we'll get into the history that Jazz has made over the first couple of games as a Yankee. But he's a good little piece, no doubt about it. I think he could be a nice fit for the Yankees, in my opinion. Now the Yankees went out and also acquired former Met and Yankee, his nephew and the son of former major leaguer Mark Leiter Jr. Now he joins the Yankees. He's a pretty good pitcher. He's a relief pitcher, big righty that gets a lot of strikeouts. His numbers haven't been great this year, 2-4 with an ERA over 4 so far. But this is a guy I think that if you plug into a big spot in a big moment, that he can produce. So that's also not a bad move for the Yankees. And they also got a little bit more of a long shot. I mean, not a long shot, but he's just not as he's not as widely viewed as a consistent major leaguer, but this is a guy that's had success at the big league level in the past. He had a good year for San Diego so far this year, and that's Enel De Los Santos. So, you know, one pretty good piece in Jazz Chisholm, and then two nice relief arms to kind of round that bullpen out a little bit. Once again, couldn't pick up that lefty that the Yankees and the Mets are both looking for. But Dan, when you look at what the Yankees did this trade deadline, and you factor in that if you put yourself in the shoes of a Yankee fan right now, who knows they only have Juan Soto for another 2 months, and you're pressing the panic button because this might be your only chance to win. That's kind of, it's a decent deadline, but it's not that great. What do you think about that, Dan?
I just feel this move might be a C minus.
Yeah. Oh, so you're giving it a C? See, I would give it a C plus. I give it a C plus, a little bit better, mostly because of Jazz Chisholm, and I actually like Mark Leiter Jr. and Yel De Los Santos. I don't really know much about, and if it was a lefty, I'd view it a little bit more favorably. But I can't blame you for giving it a C minus. What do you think that Cashman needed to do more? Do you think he needed to improve that lineup more? Maybe bring in another starting pitcher? What do you think?
I think maybe he needed to bring in another pitcher. He needed to go all in on this trade deadline.
Yeah, I agree. Can't really argue with that, Dan. And the interesting thing too is that right before the deadline, there was a lot of chatter going on with the Yankees, and people were saying the Yankees were in on this guy, they were out on that guy. But one guy I heard that was available, and I'm sure he only would have been traded had the Yankees got another starting pitcher. But supposedly the Yankees were dangling Nestor Cortez Jr. out there. Now, Cortez really hasn't had a great year. He did get the win today, by the way, if you're looking at the Yankees. Nestor Cortez got the W today to improve to 5-9. He's had a rough year. He's only got a 4.16 ERA, so it's not like he's getting lit up. But he just has had a bad luck year for the Yankees so far this year. So what do you think that they were trying to do, Dan? I mean, obviously they were trying to make a move to bring in another starting pitcher. So the only thing I can think of is that the Yankees were trying to nail a move down to bring in another starting pitcher, and then they were going to flip Nestor Cortez probably for somebody that they viewed as a difference-making bat. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I feel that's what they were trying to do, and they couldn't quite pull it off.
Yeah, they just couldn't close the deal down. The Yankees ended up blowing that game as Clay Holmes blew the game. The Yankees ended up losing 7-6, but they came back and won the next day 11-8. Very, very big victory for the Yankees there. It really felt like almost a seismic shift that the Yankees got that victory and got that off their backs. Now, then me and you also talked about when we did our Patreon show on Sunday, how the Yankees really had to get the Red Sox off their back. And as you can see, the Yankees were 1-8 in their previous 9 Sunday night games. They go out there and get the victory on Sunday night and then proceed to sweep the Phillies. Dan, me and you were talking about what a crucial stretch that was for the Yankees. And we were talking about 4-2. The Yankees went 5-1. And now the Yankees have the most wins in baseball at 65. So it's funny how quickly things turn, right?
Yeah, it is. Just the little streak, and it just turns the whole season around.
Yeah. And that's exactly what the Yankees needed. They needed something to change their fortunes. They needed something to go out there and kick them in the ass. I mean, look what they did to, just look. They go out there. If I was going to tell you a month ago that the Yankees would go 0-4 against the Mets, but then 3-0 against the Phillies, I don't think anybody would have believed that, right? What do you think?
No, I don't think anyone was going to believe that, but it happened.
You're damn right it happened. And one of the reasons it happened today, Dan, was DJ LeMahieu hit a giant second inning grand slam, 6 RBIs today. Just gigantic, as we mentioned. Nestor Cortez gets the victory to improve to 5-9, a 4.16 ERA. And, when you look at, the fact that LeMahieu had 6 RBIs, I don't know. I didn't really realize how old DJ LeMahieu is. And it's not that old, but in baseball years it is. DJ LeMahieu is 36 years old. Now, he actually became the third oldest Yankee to ever have a 6 RBI game. And outside of 1950, it's only happened once. So when you look, Johnny Mize back then from let's see, it was 1950. He was 37, 251 days, and on September 15th, 1950, he had a 6 RBI game. Tino Martinez, we all remember from the dynasty days in the late 90s. Tino did it in 2005 in his second tour of duty with the Yankees when he was 37 and 132 days. Tommy Heinrich, if you remember who Tommy Heinrich is, you're a very old baseball fan. But Tommy Heinrich, 37 and 58 days, accomplished the feat on April 19th, 1950. So they did it twice in 1950 and twice since then. Tino in 05 and DJ LeMahieu today, July 31st, 2024, at the age of 36 and 18 days. So with as long as the Yankees, as long as they've been around, that's pretty impressive that DJ LeMahieu was one of the oldest players to ever drive in 6 runs in a game, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty impressive stats there. So I got to give a lot of credit to DJ LeMahieu there.
Yeah, and he's a guy that's taken a lot of crap, and rightfully so, because he really has not performed this year at all. He's had a terrible, terrible year. But to go out there and have a game like this, in a game that the Yankees needed, because let's not forget, the Yankees did everything they could to lose the game yesterday, and they didn't. It was one of the great wins of the season for the Yankees. It'll probably be, if they have a game of the year countdown at the end of the season, it'll probably be on that list on MLB Network or whatever. Because it was such a great game, such a back and forth affair that the Yankees won 7-6 in 12, and they come out today in a day game and get the job done. Another 1-run win, 6-5 over Philly. So that just, good things keep happening for the Yankees. And, one of the reasons for that too is because their boy Jazz Chisholm, who they traded from the Miami Marlins, in his first 3 games with the Yankees, have homered 4 times. Now, you wouldn't really think. I feel like I've seen about 10 different Yankees do that already. I feel like maybe Gary Sanchez had a chance to do it when he first came up, or if you're an older fan again, maybe Kevin Moss in the early 1990s when he came on the scene. There's a lot of different Yankees, even David Justice in 2000 after the trade deadline. There's a lot of guys I could have pointed to and said, maybe that guy did it. But I never would have thought that Jazz Chisholm would be the first Yankee player ever to homer 4 times in his first 3 games. But he is, man. And, if the Yankees can keep Jazz Chisholm being that little spark plug for them, that's going to go a long way to how far the Yankees go this season.
Yeah, I just feel like he's one of those players that could have a big impact on the team, and it's going to be only time to tell how this turns out during the rest of the year, because Jazz Chisholm Jr. is about to reach new territory he hasn't reached in baseball, and including crowds he's never played in front of before.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. So, you go from playing in front of a couple of thousand people in Miami to 50,000 people at Yankee Stadium, and that's going to get your blood pumping. So it doesn't surprise me. He's got that adrenaline going, and, all the credit in the world to Jazz to how he's handled his first week or so in a Yankee uniform. So really cool to see that happening, and I hope he keeps it up. I got nothing against Jazz Chisholm. But the now just to as the Yankees have tried to really right this ship, because if you remember, the Yankees were playing some pretty bad baseball for an extended period of time. I think at one point they lost about 27 out of 40 games. So this was something that lasted for well over a month. But now the Yankees are starting to get back on track, as they've now won back-to-back series since the first time since the end of May and early June. And they're 3-1-1 in their last 5 series. By the way, that only series loss coming to the New York Mets. And, now to keep that rolling, you got the Toronto Blue Jays this weekend. So, you want if you're a Yankee fan, obviously, you want this thing to keep going right now. And, the Blue Jays are in last place. They didn't really trade any core guys at the deadline, but they traded a couple of expiring contracts, so they're a little bit weaker than they were. So, maybe if you're the Yankees, they could go in there and feast on a down Blue Jays team,
Yeah, exactly. They should be able to do that. At the same time, they can't go ahead and take the opponent lightly.
No, you definitely can't take them lightly, because it's also, it's not like the Yankees are facing a team like the Marlins that literally traded 7 of their regular players. Yeah, that's a fact. The Marlins traded 7 regular players at the trade deadline, and they actually had a whole bunch of AAA guys called up, just waiting for them to trade these guys off, waiting in the team hotel to make their major league debuts, essentially. So, the Toronto Blue Jays are not that. They still have a bunch of those guys. I mean, obviously, like Bo Bichette's hurt and everything, but they still have Bo Bichette. They still have Vladimir Guerrero. They still have George Springer. They still have a lot of these guys, Kevin Gossman and everything. So they still have a formidable team. So you can't go in there and just say, oh, well, this team's going to roll over and die, because right now the guys that are on this team are playing for next year. So they're still going to, be a pain in the ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I feel this one's going to be the biggest pain in the ass for the Yankees down the stretch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Blue Jays are going to be tough. All those AL East rivals always end up giving each other trouble, no doubt about it, especially down the stretch, like you said. So, yeah, Dan, I think that's going to about do it for us today for the baseball portion of our show. We do have a little bit of football training camp stuff I did want to wrap up with at the end of the show here. A couple of things to get to. Let's start with the Giants. Let's start with your team, the New York Giants, and we had some news break. It's not groundbreaking news, but former Jet offensive lineman Greg Van Rotten has signed with the Giants to provide a little bit of depth. We've been talking about the options the Giants have. Their offensive line has been a little bit banged up at the early goings here of camp. We've talked about Justin Pugh speaking about how he would like to rejoin the team, and obviously Greg Van Rotten. Pugh's more of a tackle, although he can play guard, especially at this point in his career. But Van Rotten is a little bit more of a guard, so bringing him in definitely gives the Giants a little bit more flexibility there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they need to have their A game, the offensive line. Otherwise, it's going to be a bad situation like last year.
Yeah, well, you nailed it, Dan, because I think one of the reasons why they signed Van Rotten is because of how poor the offense looked earlier this week. The Giants' offense was said by multiple reporters. I looked at, I know Adam Schefter and Pat Leonard both agreed with this that the Giants' offense was a disaster earlier this week in practice. Now, some people tried to give the Giants' defense the credit for that, as the Giants defense was, apparently playing really great football there. But look, especially at this point in camp, you want the offense to at least be showing you something. And Head coach Brian Dable was said to be very upset, and I think that's why they brought in Van Rotten, because Dable was said to be audibly getting on his offense and clearly not happy with their progress so far in camp. You would think with a proclamation like that he went out and ripped them to the media, which that's not Dable's style, at least at this point. And so he didn't go out there and publicly rip them, but on their sideline conversations and everything, and him going out there and taking the time to coach them up. Dable, who obviously is a guy that knows a lot about offense, he came from that Buffalo Bills offensive style, and he took a lot of that here to the Giants when he became head coach. And if he's not happy with the offense, it's good. Even though he's frustrated right now, it's good to see him kind of grabbing the reins of the team, right? And trying to coach these guys up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I even got to see that last Sunday when I was there present in person at a Giants training camp on Sunday.
Oh yeah, you did see some of Dable trying to coach up the offense.
Yeah, I did see it. I did see it, especially after Daniel Jones didn't really look so great during that practice. It looked like he kind of made a couple of overthrows and a couple of underthrows.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing too. One of the things that Dable was upset about was the amount of balls that were hitting the ground. And hey, look, that's one thing that over the years as a Jets fan, I've seen a lot of that with Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold and some of these crappy quarterbacks the Jets have had in there. We've seen a lot of balls hitting the ground, but with Aaron Rodgers this year, it seems to be a little bit different. We'll get into the good day the Jets had offensively today, but yeah, the struggles from the Giants so far, which are to be expected too, because let's not forget, Daniel Jones is still just coming back from that ACL surgery, so he still has a lot of rust to knock off. So even though I understand there's probably some people that are a little frustrated and looking at it and might be a little worried, I think you have to be patient with Daniel Jones at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And the other big question is, will he be able to do anything with this offense? Because now we don't have the Saquon Barkley anymore. It's going to rely heavily on passing, and usually that doesn't always work well in Daniel Jones' favor.
No doubt about it, man. As Saquon Barkley took his talents to South Philly, and the Giants do. I forget what was the running back the Giants signed. Do you remember his name?
I forget his name off the top. I forget.
It was the guy from the Bears, but I forget his name. Either way, he's a good running back. So it's not like the Giants aren't going to have, they're going to have a big black hole there that, somebody that's not producing at all and stinks. He'll be okay, but that's the thing that sucks about having a guy like Saquon Barkley is, you go from having a guy with talent up here to a guy with talent down here, and it's a severe drop off. Saquon is probably one of the top 3 to 5 running backs in the league, if not higher than that, maybe top 1 to 3. So he's right there. So yeah, it definitely is frustrating when you see him go to a division rivalry. No doubt about that. One last thing of the Giants before we move on from them and take a look at the Jets, Dan, is that new defensive end Brian Burns, who the Giants got in a big offseason trade from the Carolina Panthers. He did bang his ankle up a couple of days ago during practice, but the good news is he returned to practice yesterday and he felt and looked good in the field. So if you're a Giants fan and you're keeping your fingers crossed that you dodged a bullet, it looks like he dodged a bullet on this one, and he seems to be in good health.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like we dodged the bullet. It wasn't anything to hit Panic City on. Looks like he'll be ready to go during the season.
Yeah, exactly. So and he'll be good even before that. I expect to see him in the preseason, and he'll probably even be active for a couple of games as well. So, but on the other hand, there's a guy that was announced earlier today that won't be participating in any preseason games, and that is the New York Jets veteran quarterback Aaron Rodgers, It was informed today by head coach Robert Saleh that Aaron Rodgers will not be playing in any of the team's preseason games this year. But aside from that, the Jets offense apparently looked fantastic today. Uh, After, as we were just saying with the Giants, the Giants had a shaky day the last day or two. The Jets had a shaky day on Sunday, and they came back today after the off day on Monday. Or I'm sorry, it was after the off day on Tuesday, and really looked great. You got to give them credit today because Rodgers threw 6 touchdowns. Now, granted, a lot of this was during red zone work, but red zone's usually the toughest place to score, especially against a defense like the Jets. So Aaron Rodgers lighting up his own defense for 6 touchdowns today is pretty damn good. And when you look at some of the guys that he hit, these guys are going to be the weapons that they need to really come through. Rookie Malachi Corley, running back Breece Hall, and obviously wide receiver Garrett Wilson all caught touchdowns today. And the interesting thing about the rookie Malachi Corley, who was a 3rd-round pick, he had the big day. Obviously, he caught a 20-yard touchdown pass from Rodgers as well, but he also rushed one. So he showed his versatility. So if the Jets could get a guy that is that type of playmaker in the 3rd round, and with as few playmakers offensively as the Jets have had over the last couple of years, man, between Rodgers being healthy and Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson and Malachi Corley, if he could come up big, that just gives the Jets one more reason to to believe that they're going to have one of the better offenses in the league this year.
Yeah, exactly. It's just they look great. It's really gonna be it's a Super Bowl or bust kind of year for the Jets this year.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, man. And a lot of that is going to hinge on if the Jets sign this guy, which eventually they're going to work something out with him. I just hope it's more than 1 year. But Hassan Reddick is still having his holdout. He's getting fined $50,000 a day. So that number just keeps going up right now. This is a guy that already forfeited a $250,000 bonus earlier this year for not attending any of the OTAs. If he had just attended those OTAs for a couple of days in May, he would have gotten 250 grand. So this is a guy that is putting his money where his mouth is right now. So you have to figure at some point in the next week or so, the Jets are going to hammer this deal out with Hassan Reddick, right, Dan?
Yeah, I feel like that deal's going to be handled sooner or later.
And if you had to take a guess, do you think it's going to be for 1 year or longer than that?
I feel like it's going to be at least 2 years.
Okay, that's cool. I hope you're right. That's kind of what I'm feeling like too, but anything can really happen. So if you're a Jets fan, just be positive. I think this is going to be coming to a head in the next couple of days, and hopefully it's longer than 1 year. But one last thing I did want to get into, Dan, before we get out of here real quick, is another guy that had to settle for a 1-year deal. It was just announced in the last day or two that the final remaining piece of this New York Rangers team that, we were uncertain about because he was a restricted free agent. The Rangers gave a 2-year deal to Brendan Schneider a couple of weeks ago. Now they gave a 1-year deal to Ryan Lindgren. I got to tell you, I don't like this deal. I really like Ryan Lindgren. I think Ryan Lindgren deserved more than 1 year. I think the Jets, should have found a way to give him a 2 or 3 year deal, probably right around 4, maybe a little bit under 4 million. But the reason why you have to give him 4.5 now is because you only gave him 1 year. So, Ryan Lindgren is one of the Rangers' more important defensemen. So, yeah, I'm happy that they locked him up for this year and that he's going to be in, but I'm not happy that it's only for 1 year, which means next summer we're going to have to worry about signing him as a free agent. He's going to be a UFA. He's not going to be a restricted free agent next year. So he's going to be a UFA next year that the Rangers are going to have to find a way to get their cap room. The Rangers can't even figure out their cap room this year How are they going to figure it out next year now? You couldn't get a 2-year deal done with Lindgren? I don't like this deal, Dan.
Yeah, I don't like it. I really would have rather they gotten the 2-year deal worked out on him, but unfortunately, it is what it is, and hopefully it pays dividends.
You hope so. I mean, the thing is, Lindgren is going to play well. You know that he's going to have a good year for the Rangers. It's just a question of, you know, now Drury, because he has been unable to trade Trouba or any salary or get the Rangers any salary relief, that now you're going to have to sit here and gamble with one of your best defensive players. I mean, say what you want. One of the best defensive pairings in the entire NHL is Adam Fox and Ryan Lindgren. Half of that now is in jeopardy of leaving next summer. I don't like that. That's not smart in my opinion, because now, especially if Lindgren has a good year, the Rangers, what are the Rangers going to do when Lindgren's asking for $5 million next year? Are the Rangers going to be able to pay him $5 million? I don't think so. What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, I got a scary feeling, and they might be able to pull off re-signing Lindgren.
Yeah, it's annoying. And then they still have another year of the Panarin contract after that. They still haven't given Igor Shesterkin a contract extension, because let's not forget, Igor is a free agent after this year. So that's another guy they have to figure out. I mean, there are a ton of things this team has to figure out. And to be honest, in my opinion, this is one of the worst off seasons the Rangers have had in a long time. I'm very frustrated with the way that Drury's handled things. I know that his hands are probably tied because he really can't trade Trouba right now for whatever stupid reason. But it's frustrating that me and you said the whole time, okay, even after the Rangers are lost in the Eastern Conference Final, we said, okay, next year you go all in and you do everything you can to win a cup, because the Rangers were that close. And it feels like we took 3 steps back.
Yeah, it does, and it just really annoys me that Chris Drury didn't go all in. And I can tell you, he better do something at the trade deadline if this team is right there sniffing what we hope is going to happen.
Yeah. Well, so that's just a little frustrating, but I had to get it off our chest. But all right, I think that's going to do it for us today, Dan. Now that we got everything off the board, a lot we got into a lot today, no doubt about that. Before we get out of here, do you have anything like to plug for yourself?
Sure. I got my YouTube account, one word, Daniel Curlin. Also, you guys subscribe to our Patreon. You get 2 weeks early access whenever I upload a video to YouTube. So you get a nice little you'll get to see my YouTube videos before anyone else. 2 weeks early access. Subscribe to our Patreons. Also, you get Bobo's Tracks Admitted on the Best Seat in the House podcast Patreon, which will restart after 2 weeks, because unfortunately, because it's a weird deal with NBC or whatever it is, I've never heard of this. That all of a sudden they got to take two weeks off because NBC wants to free up all their space on their networks for Olympic coverage. This is unheard of, but this is the first time I've ever heard of 2 weeks in a row off of NASCAR. But in that 2 weeks, it'll Bobo's Trackside Minute will return. But yeah, you get access to that. Also, you can follow me, Bobo103 NYC on Twitter, as you see right there on the screen. Also, Bobo718 DK on Instagram and on Threads for all your Bobo content on Instagram and Threads. A lot of places you can see me.
That's right. Make sure to check out Bo in all those places. And don't forget to check out our good friend Eastside Dave on the Davey Max Sports program. Also, don't forget to check us out. We're on Kick. We're on Twitch. We're on Instagram at Best Seat in the House Pod. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter, BSets_podcast. And you can check me out there as well, as you see in the bottom of the screen, at Cramer NY. So once again, want to thank everybody for taking the time today and hanging out with us for a little while. We hope you had a good time. And for my co-host, Daniel Bobo Curlin, I'm Rob Cramer. This is the Best Seat in the House podcast. And we'll catch you next week, everybody.
Yeah, that was a great show.